In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a dynamic top count report. So to start off with, we're just going to go ahead and connect to a data model. And I'm going to grab an attribute, drop it on the report, and let's grab a few metrics. Really simple report. And if I want to do a top count, all I have to do is pick a measure that I want to base this top count on and right click on that measure and go to my quick filter and say I want a top count report. In this case, top 10. Really simple, hopefully straightforward there. However, if I would like to convert this to a dynamic top count, meaning I want to let the user choose how many items to return, it's a really simple process. All I need to do is go up to the toolbar. You'll see that there's a sort and filter button. If I click on that drop down of that button and go to the filter option, it will bring up the filter dialog. And in the filter dialog, you can see this is filtering products by a top count, and there are a bunch of different types you can choose from. It's then saying I want the top 10 based on a particular measure. So in this case, I had right clicked on sales, so it's basing it on sales. I could change this to something else if I needed to. But what we're going to focus on in this video is this right here. Clicking on the top 10, you can see that the number 10 is hard-coded here. I could change that number and filter the report. But what I'd really like to do is let the user change it at runtime. And so to do that, there's just a checkbox here that says parameterize. When I check that box, it lets me choose any global parameter that I have access to in the system. If I haven't created a parameter ahead of time, I can create one on the fly. Over here on the right, you'll see it says create parameter and a little plus sign. I'm just going to go ahead and click on it. I'm going to give it a name, and we'll call it top count. And then I can specify what type of parameter this is. Is it a discrete list, a free input, or continuous? The difference between them is a discrete list. You'll see that it just wants you to put in a comma delimited list of values. So I could do something like 5, 10, 15, and 20, and those are the only choices my user would have, is to jump between any of those numbers. And then I could decide, is it going to be buttons, a drop down, a list box, or a text box? Okay, so I could do it that way. I could do a free input, and then you'll see with the free input, you just get a text box, but then you can decide, okay, what types of numbers can they enter in? So maybe in this case, maybe I want them to just do whole numbers, or maybe just positive whole numbers, or a custom validation would actually let you specify a range of values. So maybe if I were using this parameter option to filter my margin, I could say anywhere between 15% up to 70% or something. I'm just going to say whole number, and then I could give it a default value. Then there is also continuous. The continuous lets you pick a range of values, and then how many values to increment, and then I can represent that either as a text box or a slider bar. So you've got lots of options there. I'm going to keep it with free input. We're going to just do positive numbers, and we're going to default to 10. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And you'll see now it creates this object, this parameter object called top count, and it reflects that in the filter settings. As soon as I hit apply, you'll see I now get this box here, and I can just type in a different number and either hit enter on my keyboard to execute that, or if I just pick the number and then click away from that box, it will execute it. Okay, and because I said it had to be a positive number, I could pick anything in here. I could go up to 50 and see those numbers, or go as high as I want to in this case. But to parameterize it, super simple, super easy. Okay, If instead of creating a parameter on the fly, you would like to pre-build the parameter so that you could use it in a bunch of different reports, then the way that you would do that is through the formulate module. So in this instance, I'm just going to click on new, the plus sign, go to new formulation, and you'll see that there's this option here called global parameter. I can create a numeric parameter, and then with that numeric parameter, either discrete, free input, or continuous. In this example, I'm just going to do a discrete one, and you'll see that there's a caption and a value. So I could say top 5, and it's going to be 5, and we'll go top 10, and it's going to be the value 10, and top 15 and 15. We'll just keep it simple like that, 5, 10, or 15. We then pick which of those is the default, and then what visualization style do you want to work with. In this case, we'll just choose buttons, and we'll save it. And because we're saving it, we can reuse this in a bunch of other reports. We can also make it so that other people can reuse it by placing the object either in a workgroup folder or in a public folder, depending on what our rights are. But in this case, I'll just put it here and just call it my top count and save it so I can reuse it, but nobody else is going to be able to reuse this. So now that I've got this parameter built, I can go back over to Discover, go back to the filter dialog, and if I come back over here, I should find it wherever I saved it. In this case, I saved it here, so I'm going to switch to use this parameter, go ahead and hit apply, and you'll see I've now got buttons to represent that dynamic top count. So either way, I build the parameter on the fly, or I pre-build it using Formulate and then just access it when I build my report. Provides a really flexible, simple way to create dynamic top count reports. And just an FYI, if you wanted to take an example like this further, it turns out you can do the exact same thing with measures. So right now, my top count is hard-coded to be based on sales. Maybe what I would like to do is let the user choose that as well. That is just as simple to implement. In this case, I've got, you can see quantity, sales, and returns. I can just select those, right-click on them, say I want to create a parameter. What it does is it creates this parameter for me on the fly called measure parameters. And now I can use that instead. And where you'll find the measure parameters is over here. You'll get this little FX object. And actually, I'm going to do tree because as you can see, I've got a ton of them. So here's the parameter that it just created for me on the fly. I'm going to check that box and hit apply. And what you'll see now is my top count is not only dynamic as to the number of items, but it's also dynamic as to which measure to base the top count on. And just like we could do with the 5, 10, 15, we can do the same thing here. I can actually make this object shareable so it's reusable. I can also go into Formulate and say, you know what, I want my default to be a specific value instead of the first one, which in this case is quantity, but I could modify that and maintain it. So with just a few clicks, I've created a top count report that is dynamic from the number of items and also dynamic as to which metric I'm basing the top count on. Hopefully you enjoyed that and you're able to implement that on your own data sets.